I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only
What's
one.
up, everybody? Welcome to my channel.
No one
I'm
likes being
Sunshinery. Make
lied
sure
to.
to subscribe and like this video.
You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. We are here for another Rachel Goes Rogue episode. Chapter 21, Bad at Love. I think we already know that, but she is sitting down with Dr. Gail Saltz, and they're going to dissect bad relationships and how to not make the same mistakes twice. So everybody, make sure you have liked this video, you're subscribed to my channel, and you have your notifications set to all so you can get notified every time I post a video or go live. Let's buckle our seatbelts and strap ourselves in for this ride. Here we go. I do quickly have to add this in. This episode does come with a bit of a trigger warning. She is going to be discussing her DV situation along with a therapist who is going to discuss domestic violence and how that can affect somebody and their mental health. As a DV victim myself, this is very beneficial for people that might be going through it, as well as what people have maybe experienced. It could possibly trigger something for them, and I want them to be aware before we get started. All right, so here we go.
Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I actually can't go rogue today because I've recorded a very personal episode talking about my experience with domestic violence. It's important to me to share it with you guys, but I have been advised not to air the whole thing. But there are such valuable pieces in this episode that I think is so incredibly important for me to share. And if you have ever been in a situation like I have, I hope you can use this episode as a resource and as a tool to find a way to get yourself help and to heal. We're going to get into today's episode with Dr. Gail Saltz. She is a psychoanalyst, an expert in the domestic violence field. And just a trigger warning, this episode does get very heavy.
Well, this is definitely going to be a very interesting episode. I will say, now that we know a little bit more about the topic, that I will provide resources down below in my description for anybody that is possibly going through a DV situation or has gone through a DV situation that maybe is still in need of help or therapy, someone to talk to, or just someone to help better their situation in life. I myself am also a victim of DV, and I feel like we might be getting a little very personal with this episode as well. I will give out my own trigger warning since this is my channel, and I will say it was interesting that she said she was advised not to air the entire thing. So to me, that means the lawyer said there are things that maybe have to do with the lawsuit or lawsuits that are pending, or maybe it was just too much information for her to reveal, and that's why they advised her not to put out the entire episode. I did find that interesting. So along with the trigger warning, I hope you all can enjoy this, and let's listen to it all together. And please make sure to check out the resources down below if you are in need of any kind of help. I want you to know you are not alone. You can get through this, and you are strong.
Hi, Dr. Saltz. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me today.
My pleasure. It's an important topic.
It is a very important topic, and I feel like it's one of those things that I just wanted to give them a little trigger warning that we will be talking about some heavy stuff. Let's get into it because I feel like it's time. What is domestic violence? What is your definition of abuse?
I think abuse has a wider definition than most people realize. And abuse is, well, it can be verbal, can be psychological, can be financial, sexual, or physical, or any combination of those. But what's important to understand about abuse, particularly in an intimate partner situation, is that it is really much more about control of the partner, power and control, than it is about anything else. And that is usually what is driving the perpetrator to commit those abuses, to try to keep control of their partner.
I've been processing through abuse that I've experienced with my therapist, and there are some things that I didn't know was considered abuse. She actually gave me a PDF format that maps out examples of physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, stalking and harassment, digital abuse, and financial abuse. Some of them I was surprised to see were on there.
Unfortunately, many types of abuse are all too common in adult relationships. Forms of abuse often are seen in domestic partnerships, but abuse is also common between elders and their adult children. No matter the age, gender, social economic status, education, or ethnicity, anyone can become a victim of abuse. Knowing about the forms of abuse can allow you to spot them and stop the abuse as soon as possible. Just the knowledge of knowing different types of abuse is very helpful. And I will link a website down below that goes over the different types of abuse, the definitions of what they are so that you can recognize them, and lots of helpful links from there as well to getting help if you need it. I do personally believe that this is a subject that is very hard, yes, to talk about, but it does need to be discussed so people are aware and they can know too that they are not alone if they are experiencing something like this, and that there is help out there and how they can find it.
The first one is driving recklessly or dangerously with you in the car.
Many women are unaware that what they're experiencing might be abuse. And the reason for that is twofold. They think abuse means only, I'm being hit, or, something physical is happening, or I'm being sort of berated, in an obscene way. They think it has to be something that level of extreme and very direct and very constant and very, over time. And of course, those things are. But as I mentioned earlier, when it's about control and power, one of the means of doing that is to instill fear and instill a feeling of helplessness. And so part of the methodology, I guess I'll say, sadly, of the perpetrator, right, is to create this sense of being in constant fear and unable and helpless, because obviously it's easier to control someone who feels all those things than someone who doesn't. And when confronted in any sort of way, which would be challenging the idea of control, gaslighting is a very common way of doing that. Unfortunately, I think we've gone through a couple of years of discussion of the word gaslighting, and it went from let's try and understand what that is. From my vantage point as, a psychiatrist who's very invested in public education, I think it was important to understand what that is, but it became really overused, where everything you don't like is gaslighting. And that's not what gaslighting means. Gaslighting is really telling someone that the reality that they are experiencing is untrue, and that they can't believe their own thoughts. They can't believe their own experiences, because only you can tell them what they're actually experiencing, which is likely the opposite of whatever they're actually experiencing. That is a scenario being gaslit. So, if you're in a car and you are in a terrifying situation and barely hanging on, and respond appropriately, fearfully, oh my gosh, that was horrifying and scary. Gaslighting would be to say, that's ridiculous. Nothing scary happened. What you witnessed, what you experienced didn't happen. And I'm here to tell you that.
I can agree with Dr. Gail Saltz that the term gaslighting is something that is used a lot more than it has in the past. And it is something that people do use out of context. And there needs to be a more defined definition to it for people to better understand what gaslighting means. I will say I find it very interesting that the term gaslighting comes from the name of a 1938 play and a 1944 film called Gaslight. And in this movie, it was a husband who manipulated his wife into thinking that she had a mental illness. And that's exactly where her definition comes into play, with feeling like something is happening that is not, or being made to feel like something is happening that isn't. Really quick, here are some great examples of gaslighting somebody: questioning someone's memory, refusing to listen or faking confusion to make someone doubt themselves, belittling or disregarding someone's feelings, refusing to take responsibility for their actions, changing the focus of discussion by questioning someone's credibility, using negative stereotypes against somebody. Now, these are just some examples of gaslighting. There's this amazing article for Medical News Today that I will also link down below for you guys. And it also goes over the National Domestic Violence Hotline and some examples that they came up with, which are how gaslighting can happen in various ways with DV.
And so, in addition to being made fearful, it's also very scary to be constantly gaslit, because what happens as a result is that you start to believe you can't believe yourself. You can't believe your own thoughts and your own experiences and your own gut reactions, which is why it is a common scenario in abuse. It is a way of keeping a partner in check and very dependent on your explanation of reality.
I was able to disassociate from that. And then I completely suppressed that memory until my friend brought it up later. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. Is that a common thing for people to do?
Yeah, in abuse, it is. When something rises to the level of being overwhelmingly anxiety producing, in the moment, often what happens, you see this not just in intimate partner violence, but in abuse of all types, particularly, for example, in children who are in homes being abused, that they, in the moment, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse, they dissociate, right? The dissociation is the brain's mechanism of containing anxiety that's at the level of being unable to be processed, essentially. So a feeling of being outside your body, looking at yourself, maybe feelings of numbness. That is the experience in the moment of dissociation, like I am not here. Or maybe I'm hovering above myself, looking at myself, and I don't feel in myself. And then when dissociation happens in the moment, particularly, but even sometimes without it happening in the moment, later, that memory hasn't been, let's say, properly stored, right? Because you weren't in that experience. You were dissociated or depersonalized, we call it. Derealization is another aspect of it. And so that memory is not as accessible. And in fact, it may even be further repressed, compartmentalized, and repressed so that you don't keep remembering it because it is so disturbing to you.
Now, trauma is defined by an overwhelming emotional response to a horrific event. Dissociation can be a critical part of your survival instinct during trauma. When a horrific event happens, your nervous system kicks in to protect you from your mental and physical pain. While dissociation is a helpful strategy at the time, it can also arise long after the trauma is over, causing problems in someone's daily life. Dissociation may occur when you encounter a situation or an object that reminds your nervous system, whether consciously or subconsciously, of that trauma. Trauma could actually change the structure and function of your brain So it's no wonder that people feel very strong mentally and physically with sensations related to it. Again, I will link an article down below about dissociation so that if you have felt like you have had traumatic experiences where you dissociated from, there are lots of great information in this article for you.
These are all defense mechanisms of a normal brain, a normal brain who, in an overwhelming, really overwhelming circumstance. And sometimes the later inability to recall also has to do with the panic or fear that if you recall it, it will have consequences that come with it. Consequences. So for women who are in an abusive relationship, the consequence might be I have to think about leaving. I have to think that this isn't the relationship I should stay in, or it's unsafe, or I could be harmed, I could lose my life. I will have no money. The million and one horrors that might come, particularly to women. I'm talking about women because most of the time it is women. Of course, it can be the other way around. Women can abuse men, and it does happen, but it is predominantly men abusing women. And it can happen in any relationship. Women can abuse women, men can abuse men. Unfortunately, it can happen in any way, but it's most often men abusing women. And once you're sort of in such a relationship, it can be very difficult to think about the consequences of leaving that relationship. It can seem incredibly scary for a myriad of reasons, some really psychological and not necessarily reality-based. Some are reality-based in addition. But yes, dissociation is a psychic mechanism for keeping at bay fearful, overwhelming memory.
I do want to acknowledge too that men are also victims of abuse. And yes, the percentage is higher that men abuse women, but there are women that also abuse men. A big example that we have all seen and maybe more aware of is the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation. Now, their relationship was not perfect by any means. He had his own issues as well as she did, but she gaslit him. She made him feel like his reality was something that wasn't, and made him feel like he was the abuser in the situation, though she was abusing him. And if you have seen that trial and everything that is involved, it is very intense and very interested to see a different side of it, per se, being that normally the percentage, yes, is higher that it's men abusing women, and seeing it from a different point of view is helpful to understand. I also think we aren't going to really know what she meant, Rachel, that is, by that she has had trauma where she herself has dissociated from. I don't believe she's going to go any further with explaining what that trauma is, which is her business with her therapist, and I wholeheartedly believe that. Though I do also feel like she's trying to say something, whether it be from Tom or James. We are going to speculate, of course. I do, though, believe she is possibly talking about both scenarios here, because she did go through a lot with James, like she has said, and we do know what Sandoval was telling her during what she was going through definitely could have caused very traumatic events. And you can dissociate not just from physical abuse, but also emotional abuse as well.
People often say, well, how am I supposed to know that that it could be coming when I'm in a relationship that at many times seems incredibly loving, right? And like this person professes such love to me and hasn't, hit me or, done something where I go, well, there's no question what this is, right? And these are some of the really clear-cut earlier happenings.
Are there other early warning signs that your partner may become emotionally or physically abusive?
Yes, I think there are many. For example, criticisms, that are, meant to be quite undermining of one's self-esteem. Criticism about the way you look, criticism about the way you dress, who you hang out with, who you spend time with. And along those lines, a partner who tries in various ways, whether it's through criticism or other means, to distance you from other important people in your life. So, doesn't want you to be or relate to, continue your close friendships or your family members. This is really sort of the early attempt to isolate you. And isolation is a big piece of intimate partner abuse, so that ultimately you won't really have people to talk to and help you when you're being gaslit and things are happening and you don't have a support system. You will not have a support system. But those earlier signs are usually sort of criticism of those people, or they're not good for you. They're not a good influence. I don't like the influence they have on you. A lot of them have to do with undermining your sense of competency, your sense of agency. They may tell you things like, no one will love you in various forms. No one will love you the way I love you, right?
Which these are all things that we've seen, not just with Rachel's relationship with Sandoval and everything that she's told us about how he would tell her that, like, the rehab was going to brainwash her, or don't let her parents manipulate her into doing things that they wanted her to do, like they don't have her best interest. And those were all examples that she gave us that supposedly Sandoval had said and done. But we also seen it with Ariana and the relationship with Sandoval and Ariana. And she even talks about it with her first book, how she wanted to do that first book, and he kind of made her seem like, well, first that was his idea as well. He always wanted to do a cocktail book, and he also made her feel like she could not do it without his help, and that the book would have been shit without him. And she now sees that and can reflect from that situation. But these are all just little examples of what Sandoval did. I'm not saying that James didn't do it as well with Rachel. I think we saw less of it, though we did see some examples of James and how he controlled the relationship in that sense of making her feel like if she left, she would kind of be nothing without him, kind of a feeling. I will also say, too, I feel like James is being more vulnerable with his emotions, and we are getting to see a deeper part of what he thinks and why he reacts the way he does just this season alone. And I do hope for him that he can figure out what those issues are, because I do feel like his relationship with Allie is completely different than his relationship with Rachel, but there are some things that really he needs to work on that can better the relationship he does have with Allie. I also feel like the way that we came back in from the break, per se, I know I cut that out, but I feel like so much more was said and that was cut out. And this is what we have from what they didn't cut out. And it's always going to make me wonder what was said. What do you guys think? Let me know down below.
Jealousy and possessiveness is another early sign. The problem with this sign, and the reason, as you alluded to at the beginning of this, why don't women realize they're, in this, is because many women believe and feel the stereotype of love, of really being romantically, excessively loved, is jealousy and possessiveness. And they feel like if their partner is jealous and checking out where they are at all times and wants to make sure that they're not with anybody they could be jealous about, and possessive in that way, that is a demonstration of how deeply he loves you. They might find that romantic, they might find that sexy. I'm here to tell you it is not. It is neither. It is not romantic. It is not sexy. And it is an early danger sign, really, of abuse. Men who view women more as objects, in terms of how they look and how they, and feeling ownership. That is really an early warning flag. Jealous men are, more likely to be abusive. Substance use and abuse is an early warning sign. Alcohol or other drugs. A man who harms animals, that is a very clear hallmark of abuse. It's sort of devoid of empathy and, devoid of an impulse control or, an inability to contain anger. But also, more importantly, it's the desire to inflict pain. Past relationships where there's been abuse, a partner who tells you, my exes were all crazy. My exes were all bad. Whatever went wrong, it was always all their fault. And anything that happened, they deserved because, they were crazy or did terrible things, or it was all their fault. That is also should concern you.
Yeah, one of the people that I was seeing really put that narrative out there that his ex was crazy. And in a way, I think that he might have made her crazy, because when I was taking some time to myself to really reflect on my patterns in my love relationships, I was thinking back to his ex and I was like, I don't think she's crazy. Like, I feel crazy. I think she's just, dealing with this guy.
Sometimes it's helpful to talk to an ex,
Mm-hmm.
and if your partner doesn't want you, would do anything to not have you talk to that ex, you should wonder about that. But I would say sometimes it's helpful to speak to an ex and hear what they have to say about what happened. I mean, look, in fairness, there are people walking around that did have a really, really difficult ex-partner. And, so the problem is you can never say 100% on any of these things. Maybe the super jealous and possessive, that's never a good thing. The way that your partner talks to and treats other women in his life, any women that he knows well or women that he doesn't know well, his mother, sister, a friend, a wait staff, a flight attendant, if he is berating and, very important to say, disrespectful to women in his life, and you are witnessing that, that should be a red flag to you.
I do agree that jealousy is a huge red flag when it comes to relationships, especially when they are pretty much telling you who you can and can't hang out with and being overly jealous if you are spending time with your friends or even family. That is a big red flag. I will say Gail is right too. Dr. Gail is right. Where you can't say 100% certainty that, like, if someone says, oh, my ex is crazy or all my exes are crazy, that does not mean that's not true, though it is an indicator. I will say, though James is crazy, I mean, let's be real, and Sandoval, Kristen, yes, has her own issues as well. Kristen had a lot of issues with Sandoval and that whole relationship, and that was a very toxic relationship. And she literally went from one toxic relationship to the other. And James was, yes, young and dumb, and I believe that she did bring out some of the crazy that she had for Sandoval and Ariana onto him, and he was so invested in all of it as well that he also went crazy when it came to situations like that, because I don't think at that point in his life he really understood what a real relationship was, and that relationship with Kristen was not a real relationship. It was another toxic relationship. And that's why I do feel for Rachel in the sense that he did go from then Kristen to Rachel, and he had a lot of issues that he did not take care of before getting into another relationship. And it did come out in that relationship with Rachel as well. That is why sometimes I do feel like he moved way too fast with Allie, but I can also understand where meeting somebody can then turn your life completely around and show you a different side and also help you in your growth process. I'm not saying that he's completely over everything that he went through, he has a lot of building and a lot of repair to still do. Clearly, in the last episode that we saw, where he was saying now he has thoughts because of everything that's happened as well, just like Scheana does, he needs to go and talk to somebody. He needs to be able to express what he's thinking and feeling, so that way it's not Allie that he's taking it out on. But even with Sandoval, he literally as well went from one relationship to the next to literally still in that relationship and on to another one. And though his time with Ariana was not as toxic as his time with Kristen, there were still things that he did within that relationship that broke Ariana down. And Ariana was not the type that she was going to go crazy, but instead take it out on herself. And I think maybe that's why for a long time she was doubting herself, and then having him being there, like probably saying to her, like, you'd be nothing without me, like this relationship is the best thing that ever happened to you, like you would never be anything without me, kind of a thing. I think that that's why with her moving on as quick as she did, she was ready in that sense, because she had been dealing with it for such a long time, and finding someone that was literally a complete opposite of Sandoval also helped her in her grieving process. And I know she's gone through a lot of different counseling as well as working on herself after the relationship with Sandoval, that it's beneficial. And clearly, her wanting to do couples counseling, him too, his goal was to break up with her where she thought they were actually working on things. And that also says a lot about Sandoval and his headspace. Lots of red flags that now Rachel can indicate. And I do hope for her next relationship she can point out the red flags before getting into a relationship. And I do hope that these help other people as well while getting into a relationship and knowing the indicators if it's going to be bad or something that is desirable and can move forward.
A man who does not respect women, generally speaking, and treats them in this way, it is only a matter of time before you are included.
Yes, the I'm different and I can help him and I can fix him, and he doesn't treat me this way, like rationalizing, like, oh, he might be an asshole to other people, but he treats me like a queen, so I must be special.
That's very typical. I mean, you talk about, right, why don't women see it? Well, we were talking about compartmentalization earlier, right? A form of which is, basically denial, is just the need to believe that certain things are true, that this person loves you so much, this person will take care of you so much, that this person will support you and never leave you, that loving you in the way they do makes you very special. Those things make it difficult to examine much of anything, right? They really keep you locked in. But that, in combination with the things that abusers usually tell their victims of, you are stupid, lazy, a whore. I mean, I say these words because they are the most common words that abusers tell their victims. And the purpose of all that denigration, right, is to zap you of all self-esteem. And then, of course, later they tell you, no one will ever love you and take care of you as much as I will. And you need me. That combination of, I feel worthless, they love me like no one else will love me. They told me all the reasons nobody else will love me like they love me. That combination makes it really, really difficult to entertaining leaving at all. Believing that you can leave. Well, if you can't entertain those thoughts, then you just try not to have any of it come into your mind.
It's crazy because as this lady is saying all of that, I literally am picturing what Sandoval keeps saying about Ariana, even to Ariana, but also about Ariana to others. And then it reminds me too of like how Schwartz was with Katie. And even like when it got to a point that he was doing it in front of everybody, right there was the biggest indicator that something was wrong. And this is, I think, also too why people enjoy reality TV in that sense, because they can see things from a perspective that they maybe themselves have been dealing with, or they go through, or they have seen, and it makes people respect them and understand them from a human aspect, because with celebrities sometimes and actors, we don't always connect with them or know much about their personal life to know if they are in situations like this. And that's why, even with, like I said, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, it was so shocking to a lot of us just seeing how she treated him and all the things that they went through together, just how really human that they were, even with endless amounts of money, kind of a deal. I mean, he had a private island and they still had all of these issues. And it really made people see it from a different perspective, that no matter who you are, you too can be a victim of just normal, everyday struggles. And then on top of it, dealing with mental health issues and having somebody in your life that creates more chaos and manipulates and gaslights and can make you feel so detached from the world around you. And I can really personalize this whole situation as well, because I know exactly what Dr. Gale is saying, because I've been in that situation before. I've been in that place where I felt like I wasn't good enough to leave, and that no matter what, this is what I deserve. And nobody deserves that kind of treatment at all. And I can honestly say I'm in a much different headspace than I've ever been, thanks to the help and the treatment and the group therapy and all of that I did. Those are wonderful things. And that's why I always say, even if you have nothing really going on in your life, just having somebody to talk to is always a good thing.
I think it's important that women listening know, unfortunately, intimate partner violence is really much more common than people think. Up to 30% of women in this nation will tell you at some point in their lives they were in a relationship where there was intimate partner violence. That's close to a third of all the women in this country. It is not an uncommon problem, and unfortunately, many women don't get out and either stay in a cycle of harm and abuse that escalates. I do a lot of public talking about concern about rates of suicide and homicide and gun violence and so on. But really, one of the hallmarks of gun violence, of murder, and the most common group murdered in this country are women from domestic violence by gun. And they feel trapped. They can't see a way out. And there always is a way out, but it can be very, very difficult. Sometimes even getting out, there can be dangers. But obviously, the earlier one gets out, that's why I think it's helpful to talk about these early warnings, that the earlier one gets out, the less it's escalated. The longer something has gone on, the more dangerous, the more likely of really life-threatening injury, and the more likely of continued stalking, afterwards.
It's a scary reality that we live in, and unfortunately, there is so much untreated mental health issues that we all struggle with in this world, and there's not enough people getting treatment and help for the issues that not only they might have, but other people have that affect them. And there's so many just sad stories and sad things that happen because of these issues that go untreated, and so much violence and people losing their lives for no other reason than they had no way out. And if you are scared to leave, I promise you, there are people that can help, that can make plans, that can put things into place to help you. So that way, when it is time to get you out, you are safe and you are doing so in a safe manner. I will list those resources down below. I have been through it myself. I have seen friends go through it. And my first thought is, okay, you know that you need to get out. Let's plan this, because you need to make sure you have everything put into place to protect yourself, your family from any harm coming your way. And that is unfortunately the scenario that can happen, especially if you are in a situation where they see that you have left. Then it can cause stalking and harassment and trying to find you to bring you back and then harm you. And that's what we don't want.
What is the solution then? How does somebody get out successfully?
One of the first things I would say is trying to find somebody in your life that you trust, that you can start talking to about what is happening. Of course, if you're unclear, you feel so gaslit, you're not sure what is happening. Talking to a therapist can be super, super helpful and clarifying what is going on with you, what is happening, and obviously for getting ideas for how to remove yourself safely from the situation. Sometimes that starts with somebody that they trust in their life. It might be their mom, it might be a friend. This is happening. I need to talk through like what is happening. And sometimes one's mind is so affected that you need someone outside to say, hey, this is abusive, really. And this is not safe to stay in. You shouldn't stay. And you are not those things, but he's making you feel that way. And you need to let me help you brainstorm about how to get out of this situation. Sometimes a woman needs to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. There's always someone there to talk to. Try to obviously do that not in front of your partner. This was actually a huge problem, and we saw a big uptick in domestic violence during the pandemic because women were in lockdown with their partners and they couldn't even, get away enough to make a phone call or to go to a shelter. 800-799-7233 is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. There's somebody there 24/7 to talk to who can give you resources like this home, this shelter, what to take with you, what not to take with you, what to assume he has seen, your phone, your messages, etc. Texting someone, sometimes doing something online, you got to assume that he is looking at. Don't assume that that is a safe way to converse with somebody. Do it in person if you can, or call the hotline when your partner is not there.
The hotline, it just sounds so intense. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, it sounds like, okay, this is a crisis moment. And it almost like me preemptively thinking like, okay, no, this is only when someone is going to be physical with me. Like someone's got to punch me in order for me to call this number. Is that true?
That is not true. This is a hotline that provides counselors who are versed, as we are talking about today, in everything from early signs to obviously very dangerous situations. So they can be helpful in all of the above. If your partner has harmed you in any way, you are scared and you don't know what to make of this, this is a reasonable call to make. You will get a counselor who can talk through with you what is happening and what's a reasonable next step for you to take, can provide resources like a referral. Maybe you want a counselor to talk to who knows something about this subject matter, can help you find someone.
It's 800-799-7233.
It is also known as 1-800-799-SAFE. The last four numbers spell out the word SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-7233. Or you can text them at 88788 with the word START. Also, you can go to the website, which is thehotline.org, and chat with someone live from the website. There are many options. That way, if you can't talk to somebody via a phone call, and you can text, you can do that. Or if you don't have a phone, but you have access to the internet, that you can get online and talk to somebody. Whichever way is the easiest for you, and the way that you know that whoever you are trying to kind of stay secretive per se, or make sure that they can't see, the best way that is for you, there are options for you. And I will say, Rachel did ask a very wonderful question. She feels like that someone would have to physically harm her for her to think that the hotline is a place for her to call or reach out to. And that is not true, like Dr. Gale said. This is in place for any type of situation, even if you are feeling like you might be in a situation and you just need someone to talk to that has that capability of being realistic and upfront and honest about everything that you are giving them information wise, they will be that person for you, even just to talk to. That is why this is a wonderful website and National Domestic Violence Hotline. In general, it's an amazing organization, and they put a lot of time and effort into it, and I appreciate all of their services that they provide for everybody. You can even, if you feel like you have mental health issues or thoughts that are happening, NAMI is a wonderful organization. I know that it is an organization that Rachel represents herself. It is an organization that I have always felt near and dear to my heart before even Rachel existed in my life. They can also provide you with resources and just someone to talk to if you are experiencing something and you just want to talk to somebody that will be realistic, real, upfront, honest, and tell you how it is, but also be there for you to provide resources, different opportunities to be able to get the help that you deserve and need if you are seeking it. Don't ever feel like any situation is not worthy of seeking help, because it is, no matter how big or how small. All of the information is provided down below in the description for everybody.
Just save that in your phone. If you've listened to this podcast and it resonates with you, just save that in your phone as a contact. It's a resource for you. I heard a statistic that people will try to leave their relationship 7 times before successfully leaving. This hotline is there for you after like the first time you try to leave and then you're not successful in leaving.
Unfortunately, it is common to go back for all of the original reasons that it was hard to leave in the first place, right? So you leave, you're scared, you don't know how you're going to manage things, or maybe even in a situation where you're financially able and you have a place to go and all of that, you're scared, you're lonely, right? You feel overwhelmingly sad. It's the end. There isn't somebody to take his place right away, which is a good thing, trust me, before you've worked out, because it's, if you've been in an abusive relationship, I really strongly urge you to dip into some therapy to understand what might have led you there in the first place. Because often women who get into abusive relationships, there are reasons that they're not aware of that have drawn them to this type of relationship. And without understanding what that is, it wouldn't be unusual to enter into a very similar next relationship. So it is really important that you get help. It is also important and helpful because your likelihood of going back will be diminished if you understand how you got in. You know, many women have witnessed abuses in their homes growing up or had in a past abusive situation, and they are repeating something. You know, unconsciously, they are repeating something and trying to rework something, reprocess something. And that is drawing them to an abusive relationship. And then it will draw them right back in. It is hard to leave. You get scared. You don't understand what happened. You feel a longing. You wish the familiarity. The man is probably continuing to contacting you and say, this will never happen again. It's just because I love you so very much. We can work this out. I promise to never do it. And you go back. And, you know, he reminds you of all the reasons not going back will ruin your life. And so, yes, women often do go back, and then, you know, it gets worse and it gets more dangerous. So, I think therapy is super helpful in that regard. And also the structure of systems that are out there for women who've been in this situation that can help them financially, that can help them with support systems, that can help them with safe places if that's what they need. And frankly, to help them to not enter into a new relationship that is abusive again. If you are in any sort of physical danger, I would tell you, don't go back. Number one
Wow.
homicides in this country are women from domestic violence.
And please don't feel discouraged if you have left and gone back, because that is something that is more than likely going to happen because of the manipulation, because of the thoughts, because of everything. That's why these resources are great to have. And I do agree with Dr. Gale that therapy is a wonderful tool, especially regarding situations like this, and making sure that you don't fall into the same traps and same bad habits and things that you might not be aware that you are falling for, that you can come to understand and better your situation. I know for me personally, I went through 2 very toxic relationships and finally sought therapy and was able to understand why I was attracted to those relationships and why I kept going back, and then later found somebody that was very similar to the last. And even for people that, like I said, might not have a thing wrong in their world, just having somebody to talk to and to be able to work out the process of your thoughts and what you're feeling and what you're going through is so very helpful, especially for people that have been through very traumatic situations, very toxic relationships, very toxic even family environments. Things that maybe happened to them when they were a child that now are causing issues that maybe they're not even aware of. I think therapy is a wonderful tool. I think people stereotype people that go to therapy as having an issue. I think that is a big thing that we need to stop and normalize it more, that talking to somebody is helpful. Just like if you were to have an issue in life, you are going to talk to your family, your friends regarding it, to just make sure that maybe you're making the right choices. It's the same thing. And having a therapist is not meaning that you have issues or that there's something wrong with you. It just means you have someone there to help you work out everything that you are going through, thinking, and needing help if you need help. It's a wonderful tool that I think even our health insurance needs to get on top of and provide more services for people, because I don't feel like there's enough.
Protect yourself out there and know that there are resources available to you. There are people like Dr. Schwartz who care for your well-being, and you deserve only the best. Don't settle for anything less. Thank you so much, Dr. Schwartz. You have a podcast of your own?
I do. I have a podcast called How Can I Help? And people can find me on Instagram at Dr. Gail Saltz, DrGailSaltz.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Schwartz, so much.
Thanks for having me.
Though this was not a very tea-spilling, informative episode per se to the Rachel Leviss of it all and the VPR drama of it all, it was a very important episode, especially for domestic violence, different types of abuse, and I wanted to make sure that everybody that might not be so aware can become aware. And that way they can provide those resources for not just themselves, but for anybody else that might be feeling like they're going through something. I will also say, I do find it very interesting that we didn't hear a lot of anything from Rachel regarding what she went through and why this was so important to her. She didn't personalize it. And I do understand there were reasons, like they said to her that they advised her it would be best to take half of the episode out, which were probably those parts where she got personal and went into detail about what she personally was going through with this situation. Which, like I did say before, there are many of reasons why someone would advise her not to have those in this podcast. A, like I said, maybe there's other lawsuits in the process. B, maybe her attorney just said for the lawsuits that are going on, maybe it's best you don't talk about this. C, just healthy advice that maybe she took because she wanted that advice, which, sometimes when you are putting your personal business out there for others to scrutinize, and though you might want to help by telling your story, there will always be those people out there that will always have something to say regarding it. And unfortunately, you can never stop people from having an opinion, and sometimes their opinion's not needed, and it's like, really, like, I'm out here trying to put my story out there to help others, to warn others, to be able to make other people aware that this is something that can and will happen, and it's something that does happen, and people just take that for granted, that people really are trying to be there for other people. I see it all the time on YouTube. And that's sometimes why I hold back from being very personal about things that I've been through, because people literally scrutinize every single thing people say, and it's unbelievable. Though, I get it. We do it sometimes here with Rachel, where we scrutinize things that she says, and we form an opinion based on that. I mean, that's going to happen regardless of whatever you're doing in life. Any conversations with anybody in life, that's going to happen. There are just ways to go about it. There are ways to give your opinion where you are not then causing harm or trying to maliciously bring harm to individuals and saying and doing things to literally hurt individuals because you don't like them. I, myself, am not a big fan of Rachel. I do feel she did a great job with this episode, though we know half of it was taken out. I think she did a great job with providing the information, with having this therapist on there that had very knowledgeable information regarding the situation and the subject matter. And it was something that I do feel like a lot of people do not like to discuss because of how it is such a controversial kind of topic, and a topic that not a lot of people do want to talk about. And I give her props for going out there and putting this out and providing information for people. I will suggest, though, for her, like in the story notes for this episode, she didn't provide any links to the different things that she mentioned, like, for instance, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. She could have provided the information to the website. She could have put the number again, the text number, all of that for people. And that's why I felt it was very important for me to stress to you guys also that all the information that I talk about and that they are talking about is down below for you all to go and reference to and be able to have if you do need it. Or maybe can pass it to a friend or family member that you might feel needs this information. But anyways, guys, I hope that this episode was still enjoyable, and we will be back very soon. I'm working on my next project already, and I hope you all are having a lovely weekend, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye, everyone.
Wanna burn all the bridges between us.